Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Codex Station's Comic Character of the Week, where we take one character, do that deep dive on that character, give you the must-reads, badass moments, top covers, so much more. Tonight, I'm your host, Sal the Slab Guy. Right over there is J-Dub. I might switch you because I don't like this positioning. Down below me is the Rick. Oh, nope. Down over here now is the Ric Flair of comics.
Woo!
And tonight we got a special guest star, Calvin, which is Uncle Gary's bestest friend from Japan.
He is my mentee.
Mentee.
He is my mentee.
I always tell my students that Gary is my comic book sensei.
There you go. And
Very
you have learned
good,
well,
very good.
Grasshopper. Yes, you have.
How you guys doing? Doing good?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Doing good.
Looking forward to this character. I can't believe Sal and Jamie did all that reading for this. This was pretty amazing.
I needed to like bathe in holy water after reading this.
Well, you haven't right. Listen, and you hadn't read it all. There's like
No.
This is this
There's a ton out there.
blasphemy, sex, violence, all the good stuff, man. I tell you what, it filth. A lot of filth in this.
A lot of filth.
A lot.
Of filth.
You just look at some of the covers and you're like, huh.
And you know, so you think, okay, Preacher's an obscure character, but then it had a TV show that lasted, I think, 3 seasons.
Yes,
Yeah, it did.
on AMC.
Which I heard it was like went off the comic book though.
Went off the comics. But I will say this about the TV show: the 3 main cast members were fantastic.
Carl Urban was one of them. Wasn't he? Carl Urban was the preacher, right?
No.
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 Dominic something was the preacher.
He looks like Carl Urban.
But he was great. Yeah, it was Dominic something. The gal that played Tulip was fantastic, and the guy that played Cassidy was great too. Casting was superb, and I think Calvin, we'll agree. The first season was pretty good, but then it kind of got a little nutty.
Yeah, I say the first season was pretty good. It was definitely like, because obviously one of the things about Preacher is that it came out in, was it the mid-90s?
95. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whereas the TV show takes place in like 2016. So you guys know more than I do that the difference between the mid-90s and 2016 is like night and day. So
that's
there
true.
were a couple of things that they had to, I think, change and adapt. And there were a couple of story decisions that they changed as well, but overall, yeah, it got the spirit of the series right.
Yeah, I was disappointed that they didn't use the John Wayne aspect of it with what Jesse Sullivan. Maybe that's from the family. I don't know. They did one episode that had the John Wayne influence on it, and that was it. And I think once they had one of the old John Wayne comics laying on a table, and Jesse talked about how much he loved it. Loved John Wayne, but yeah, that could have been from the family not wanting to be part of the controversial show like that. But the John Wayne aspect of the comic, he came off great. It was such a cool, mystical illusion, not illusion or hallucination or whatever was going on there. I think we all have different ideas of what that could be. So, but it was just really great.
All right, then. Let's get some business out of the way before we go ahead and kick this off. Like I said, I'm your host tonight. I'm the house, baby. I'm your host tonight, Sal the Slab Guy. When I'm not here on Codex, check me out on YouTube under Sal's Comic Corner and also Instagram as the Slab Guy 77. Down over here is the man that needs no introduction. He is the Ric Flair of comics.
Woo! Thanks.
It's Uncle Gary. Where can I find you, buddy?
All right, they can find me right here, Comic Logic, baby. We're Loudoun County, Virginia's only comic book store. Please come and see us if you're in the Northern Virginia area. We would love to make your acquaintance. You can catch me, you catch Mighty Mike Harbin, catch Rob Kalin. Every Wednesday, I'm in there. I'm getting my comic fix, baby. Yeah, I'm getting that 4-color ink put right in here, making you strong. I told you once, told you twice, told you a million times. Reading comic books make you strong. You start out with one book. Then you got a stack of books. Then you got a short box. Then you got a long box. Next thing you know, you are stacking them up to the ceiling, and it makes you strong, baby. Read comic books. Do some push-ups too. That helps.
That
Also,
always helps.
also, yeah, do like this old man. Do 423 days a week, and next thing you know, you will be comic book ready.
That's right.
We also want to give some love to Comic Character of the Day. That is the site started by our good buddy Archduke Kevy that highlights a different character of the day. Our buddy Dan Kelly is posting the characters of the day. Myself, Talking Geek, are posting covers of the day. And sometimes you'll get two for the price of one. So, but usually one of us has got it covered if the other one doesn't. So it's awesome. You get a twofer. And Dan also has a good question of the day, and usually a random and most of the time salacious panel of the day. And who doesn't love that?
Salacious.
Yes, salacious. So come and see that. So we definitely encourage you to take part in that. Now,
Definitely.
also, I guess I'll introduce Jamie, and then you want me to introduce Calvin?
Introduce
Okay.
Calvin now.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. This gentleman sitting here with the, look at the youth on that man's face. But not as young as he used to be. He's got a young child now and a wife, and he's living halfway across the world in Japan, and that's put some age on that young man. So, but he still looks youthfully, zestfully fresh, and I'm proud of this fella. He is somebody I met quite a few years ago, and he is an old soul when it comes to comic reading. I started him out with some of the horror books, and he can sit there and he can look at these horror books and tell you Nick Cardy. He can tell you Mike Kaluta. He can tell you Jim Aparo. He can tell you Bernie Wrightson. He can tell you all these great old artists. So he knows them. He's got them right in his, right in here, his eye. He can discern who they are. I'll tell you Joe Kubert. Yeah, that's right. It's Calvin in a heartbeat. So Calvin took to these old books, and he's borrowed quite a few books from the library to read. So he is an old soul. He is a well-read comic individual that belies his years, because I've given him some old school stuff to read, and he has taken to it like a fish to water. So his comic knowledge runs deep. And if he living in Japan, he said that he says I'm his comic sensei. Well, he started out as Grasshopper. Now he is full blown samurai in his own right. And speaking of samurai, this man is so cool. He lives in an official, historically recognized samurai house in Japan. Doesn't get any better than this. The one and only Calvin Duncan.
There you go. Welcome aboard, Calvin.
I would like to be clear. I don't live in the house. I said this before. I own the house.
He owns the house.
He owns the house.
Yeah.
Owns the house.
This is a modern apartment.
Okay.
Owns the house. Okay.
Yeah. But I am fixing it, and I want to live there.
Okay. Well, there you go. He's fixing it up. So your spirit lives there.
Yes, it does live there.
Okay.
With the samurai. So there you go.
Yeah.
All right, then. Why don't you go ahead and introduce this guy right here, because you always do a good job of that.
All right. So this fella up here that's looking around, that's bleary-eyed because he's been reading all these preacher books, and he's got
to go to paperback novels just to clear my palate.
Well, he's got to immerse himself in a big giant drum of holy water to get all the blasphemy that he's soaked up through this series, and it'll do him well. So he started this station. So if he's bleary-eyed and if he's got to cleanse himself, he's the reason, because he started this channel. He built this channel brick by brick, so he can only blame himself for the predicament that he is in this week. So without him, we wouldn't be coming to you live all across the world. I mean, look at the international flavor we have going on tonight. And it only happened because he had a vision, and is quoted in here, which is quoted from Larry McMurtry, Lonesome Dove. He's got a vision, a hell of a vision. The one, the only master builder himself, J-Dub.
There he is. Hey, Richard.
Thank you for that.
Richard has joined the chat.
Hey, Richard.
Yeah. Richard.
There we go. Chris is wandering around somewhere.
Yeah.
I guess he is. Chris, if you're there, let us know.
Thank you again for that, Uncle Gary.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys know what I'm about to say. Guys, go check out the CodexStation.com. One-stop shop for everything Codex. Get some merch. Need team. Let us know what you like, don't like. And also, you can find all of our bios on there. And those, what are they?
The socials.
Yes.
All the socials. And I mean, look at us. Now, Calvin doesn't look at him. He's clean-cut young man. We have all the socials. We're positively dripping with the socials. And we'd like nothing better than to give them to you, baby. So hit that button.
Yes. And I also believe that this month we have a giveaway like we do every month.
That's right. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The Codex Station's crazy, and we're giving away something every month for the full year. Now, this month is March Madness, and you could win these books. Jamie, why don't you tell them how they can win?
Yes, all you gotta do is if you're in the chat right now, put hashtag giveaway. If you're new to this station, guys, hit that subscribe button, take a screenshot, post it anywhere, let us know you're automatically entered. And if you are a member for that $1 a month, you're entered in automatically for all the giveaways for the rest of the year.
Right, and you can win this Red Hulk #1, the Eddie Brock Carnage #1, and this Absolute Power #1, all foily goodness, plus that Joker, Death in the Family, from the New 52 trade out of my personal collection.
And can I say that is an amazing read?
Comes with Sal DNA too. You can create your own Sal.
You could. It won't be
Richard,
the same.
We already got you, brother. I knew before you even.
Oh, Richard, man, you're always entered in, but you're never going to win because you don't feel right about the beast. So.
Richard
look! I hit the spinner and Richard won all of a sudden.
Yeah, Richard knows the beast is an Avenger. Yes, he does. That's right.
Oh God! But I gotta say, between this and Grimjack, doing the research on it, this didn't hurt my head reading compared to Grimjack. Grimjack gave me a headache that I took every over-the-counter pill to get rid of.
This hurts your soul.
It does.
Yeah.
This one hurt me more than Grimjack, actually.
Did it?
So for me, I'm totally opposite on you on that one.
Yeah, Grimjack, I had to learn how to spell words again in that one. Sound it out.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, do you see that the lights are turning red, which means it is time to kick off this show? So stand by. We will see you guys in about a minute.
Right. Oh, that was snazzy. That was gritty and dirty. I like that.
I think that's the best intro yet.
That was nostalgic seeing all those panels.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That was pretty cool. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Hey,
Chris.
There's Chris.
Speaking of gritty.
Speaking of gritty himself.
Gritty and grimy, Chris.
Yep. Tonight's comic character of the week from the Codex Station, we are going over Preacher. I'm your host, now the Slab Guy. Joining me is the Worth Player Comics. A-Dub, the Master Bit Commander right there. And of course, we've got a special guest star, Calvin from across the sea, coming from us live from Japan.
Yes, he is.
All right. So we are set to go ahead and kick this off. Since Dan's not on tonight, Gary, the honor falls to you. Will you go ahead and give us the intro on Preacher?
All right. In 1995, a Vertigo book appeared in DC's pantheon of characters by Garth Ennis writing it, Steve Dillon doing the art, Glenn Fabray doing the cover, and it was Preacher. Preacher was, Jamie a little bit earlier talked about it, reminded him of a Grindhouse film. And you know what? It's a Grindhouse comic is what it is. I think that was a perfectly apt description. It is gritty. It is grimy. It is greasy. It is full of blasphemy. It is full of sex. It is full of violence. It is full of so many of the good things in life. And you know what? Ultimately, it's really a Western.
Yeah.
You know? It's really a Western. So it is really fantastic. But Preacher was a Jesse Custer. Jesse Custer was preaching. You know, he was a kind of a mollified. His personality had been contained. He was kind of in a milquetoast state of mind at the time, doing the wishes of his evil grandmother, you know, to become a preacher. And that was his life's calling that she wanted him to do. So he had given up. He's doing this. And something entered his body, his soul, while he was preaching, and it destroyed the entire congregation. And that entity was an escapee from heaven, and it was called Genesis. And Genesis was the byproduct of a union between an angel and a demon that had been contained in heaven and had escaped. And, you know, my preacher has a lot of interpretation. My interpretation is because Genesis had good in him, had bad in him. He picked Jesse because Jesse was a person that had good in him and bad in him on almost an equal level. And Genesis found a host that could support that dichotomy that it had. And thus, Jesse Custer became preacher. And preacher is a normal man, but he had a tough upbringing, so he knew how to fight. He got his mojo back as far as his grit back to him, but he got a little extra benefit from Genesis that was inside him, that when he spoke a certain way, he had what was called the word, you know, as short for the word of God. And when he would speak this word, this way he would speak, this tone he would speak, whoever listened had to do what he says. And I'm sure in our badass moments, there'll be some things that he told people that they had to do that they did. And it is just, oh my God. So he, you know, law enforcement, throw your guns down. Bam, they throw the guns down. Let us, you know, clear a path. So small things like that, but also some major, pretty rough things he would use that. And he didn't always like to use it because he didn't like to use it as a crutch. You know, there were certain times when he would pull that out. And a lot of times he would like to get by without using it, but it's one hell of a power to have, you know, but, you know, to speak that word and have whatever is said to be completely followed. So Jesse has, he embarks on a quest because he believes that God has abandoned his people, that God has abdicated, and God has abdicated heaven. And Jesse feels God owes everyone an answer as to why he's done this. And he has made it his mission to track God down. And there our quest begins.
All right. Very good. Very good. So now let's go ahead and jump to our next segment, which is what we felt what works best for this character. So Calvin, I'm going to kick it to you. Why don't you tell me what works best for you with this character?
I think what works best for this character is that he has his own story that most people haven't really felt before, but I think a lot of people can understand aspects of what he went through in life. We can go into more detail later, but obviously the abusive background that he comes from with his family, that level of extremity, that level of extreme abuse, maybe some people know it, but not everybody knows it. But most people know what it feels like to be in that sort of situation at some degree, and that gives them an understanding about why Jesse has that sense of justice, despite and also how he feels connected to his faith, even though his faith is kind of one of the driving forces for his for that abuse that he suffered from. Oh God.
Mr. Keith says he has 7 nieces and nephews and their classmates here to watch this most wholesome Christian superhero.
Mr. Keith, I'm just going to tell you right now, that is going to be a lifetime of expensive therapy that they're going to go through.
Yeah.
Arse face. You've got a face like an arse.
Oh yeah, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Tip of the iceberg.
All right, very good. Very good. All right, Uncle Gary, how about you?
What works best is this character, as Calvin said, his whole life has been shaped by tragedy, extreme brutality. Hopefully people watching haven't been influenced by the amount of trauma that Jesse has been influenced by, because it is something harsh. But he learned from a young age to overcome some extremely gruesome, horrific, brutal things that happened to him and his family and his life. And he pulled himself up by his own boots and made his life. And he lived his life on the edge of the law. But he had a code about him. He had a code. He had a code about him. There were some things his father told him. Don't take no shit off of anybody. Don't suffer fools. But son, be one of the good guys, like Alvin, because there's way too many of the bad, right, buddy? So,
exactly. And I think was also because he had the abuse from parts of his family, but his mother and his father were always the ones that loved him and gave him that loved him and gave him that rock. And something that resonates with me too, because through his father, he had this love of John Wayne that became a recurrent theme in this, where he was trying to walk that path. And I had a bit of a tough childhood too, and I didn't have any male role models in my life, and I kind of picked John Wayne too, because I wanted to be able to look up to somebody that that his image was somebody that was doing the right thing and standing tall and walking forward into the face of whatever storm of life was throwing at him. And so I understand that a lot, so it spoke to me that way. But I think he works best when he's this guy that's pulled himself up through all this tragedy, walking his own path, and he's got his own code. He's got a code of how people should treat one another, that they should treat one another with respect, and he won't tolerate fools. He won't tolerate cruelty. He does not tolerate a bully at all, nor would I in life. So he's got a code, and I love it when he is adhering to that code, and he is making those that oppress people weaker than him, when he is holding them into the fire and making them pay for what they've done to others. So that's when I think he's at his best, when he is pissed off and he is he's the judge. He's gonna handle the deliberations on how you're gonna pay for what you've done.
Okay, very good. Jamie, how about you?
Well, I just want to say that you two bring up a very good point, is that this character is in some ways very relatable to most people out there going through some type of tragedy or trauma through their lives. So that's right off the bat, that works for everyone, not just the character itself. But for the character, I just love the fact that this whole series feels like we were talking about before show, feels like a grindhouse movie. Like, it's just nonstop brutality, action, drama, unfiltered. Like, the action is just wild. And what he goes through, it just makes the character. Like, that style, I don't think anyone else really could pull that.
Okay.
That's Garth Ennis, man.
Yep. I'm gonna have to agree with you guys. He's very gritty. He had a very I was thinking traumatic type of upbringing.
He did,
but that defined him in his character, and I have to agree with Gary. He's got that code that he lives by, and he's standing to that. And you'll see later on in some stories and some badass moments that I actually found that he's standing up to be a badass, to stand up to that bully. He's gonna he doesn't care. He's very gritty. I like that, and that's how it really works best for me. So, but everything you guys had said, I got to echo 100%.
Oh, he is a 100% ass kicker too.
Yeah. Yep.
Listen, I would say that he's the kind of guy that says, I'm a good man, but I ain't no bitch either.
There you go. Exactly.
Should we have prefaced the start of the show? There might be some language in this this episode.
Just got to wait. Hang on. Yeah, we just got demonetized.
All right. Well, we're done now. We're past the point of no return. So, ladies and gentlemen,
I'm worried
get
about
ready.
I'm worried about all them nieces and nephews.
Mm.
They already exited the room.
That's Mr. Keith's problem. That's not ours.
Yeah.
You know, that might borderline as child endangerment. Yeah.
That might.
Like, Theo, you want to hear about Preacher?
Yeah. I was reading through some of the comics, and my daughter walked by it. I was like, I had to quickly close the screen.
Yeah.
I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Can't see that.
Now let's see that. Dude, it's not for you.
Not for chillins.
Nope.
No chillins.
All right, so let's go ahead and skip to our next segment.
Just let me say my oldest child, Danielle, I would not let her read my Preacher books till she turned 25. that
says something right there.
I made her wait till she was 25, and even then I was like, all right.
Yeah, all right.
Man, I was
And he's like
17 when I read
shaking as he
Preacher.
hands them to her.
Yeah. What'd you say, Calvin?
I said I was 17 when I read Preacher.
Yeah. Now you read it before me, though, right?
I don't think so.
Or did
Because
I
when
get-
did you read it?
All right, then I guess I might have introduced Calvin to Preacher when he was 17 and a minor. So when's the statute of limitations run out on that?
I think you're good.
I think you're good with that. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and jump to badass moments. And since I know these two guys got probably 1,000 badass moments, Jamie, why don't you start? I'll come in next, and then we'll let these guys pick up everything else that we missed.
All right, so just to let everybody know, if you see me looking away, it's because other than Grimjack, this is the only other one I had to do writing for and wrote everything out because it's still fresh in my head, but it just goes away. The ADD, swear to God. The first one I got was Jesse commands the clan to kill themselves from Preacher number 23.
Yep.
As we talked about earlier, he uses the voice of God on some white supremacists, and there's just a bunch of Klansmen trying to intimidate him, and he tells them just to go kill themselves, and they do.
Yeah.
Well, that's after they send the strong man after him, and he grabs him by the balls and squeezes him until he bleeds out his mouth.
I didn't know whether to use that or this, so I'm trying to.
Yeah,
I'm picking and choosing right now.
This could be like the Lobo show, one that is like, oh my God, I can't believe we're staying on this. Mr. Keith, you are right.
Yeah.
Bud. Yeah.
Yep, Mr. Keith, 100%.
All right, next one I have comes from Preacher number 12. This is Cassidy versus, I'm going to butcher how to say this there, Herstarsman.
Oh,
Hair Star.
Hair Star.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. The Cassidy, the hard-drinking Irish vampire. I want to preface that, by the way.
Yes.
Irish vampire.
Irish drinking vampire. Drinking Irish vampire.
Just proves you don't mess with him. He takes on a squad of heavily armed Grail operatives. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, Cassidy rips through them in a brutal fight using his vampire strength and sheer intensity to come out on top. Even after being captured, he spits in Hairstar's face and refuses to break, making him one of the toughest characters, I think, in the series.
Oh, yeah.
And then my last one is from Preacher 65 and 66. This is the final showdown with the Saint of Killers. I put basically in the standoff that can only happen in Preacher, by the way. Jesse goes head to head with the Saint of Killers, the most unstoppable force in the series. Instead of backing down, Jesse stands his ground and even tricks the Saint into thinking he's holding Genesis hostage. In this whole moment shows pure grit, showing that Jesse doesn't just rely on powers. He's a man who can go toe-to-toe with a literal force of destruction and walks away still.
Yeah, and keep in mind, understand, and Pam is Jonah Hex to the nth degree, baby. The Saint of Killers is like we have the Saint, Saint Francis of Assisi. You have the Saint of this, the Saint of Killers is the Saint of Killers. He's the baddest ass ever. So bad that heaven had to keep him locked away to not release him, and they were so scared of Genesis that they released the Saint of Killers to track down Jesse. And Saint of Killers is no joke. And Jamie, you're right. For Jesse to go toe to toe with the Saint of Killers and get him in on his ultimate plan.
Yeah, to make him believe that he's holding Genesis hostage. Like that was just like,
yeah.
Yep.
A Santa Killer's man so cold-blooded that hell froze over once he went there.
Yes.
I know I could be a little vague on some things because I know you guys would be like, yeah, and then this and this and this, and I'm like,
Well,
that's why I wrote it out the way I did.
Well, no, it's good that you wrote it that way too, because and you know, we don't want to give everything away, because this story went 66 issues,
Yes,
plus 5 specials and 4-issue miniseries, and so it tells a story. It tells a whole story, and then it's done. So we don't want to give away exactly how things ended on this, because hopefully somebody will want to read this story, because it's a hell of a read, a hell of a ride.
Yep.
It is.
All right, so let me start with my 3 badass moments, and one of them was Preacher number 66, how he stood up to the Santa Killers. I'll let you guys go with that, since Jamie did a fabulous job on that. You covered all the points that I was going to say to it. It was almost, I almost felt like I want to add that he did it without violence. He did it without violence. He stood up to the people. He stood up to him and out thought him, or outmaneuvered him that way.
And he didn't stutter either, did he, Sal?
No, he did not.
He faced the baddest thing in the whole damn universe. He did not stutter.
Didn't stutter, didn't back down. Yep. Very true. Very true. All right, so my next one is from Preacher number 61. You already know what this one is. Count every grain of sand.
Yeah.
So he uses the word of God on
Hoover.
And he tells him to count every grain of sand at the beach, and he stops him after he gets to like 3 million or something like that. but that's a badass moment in itself.
And Hoover, when you see Hoover again after time has elapsed, he's emaciated, he's lost teeth, he hasn't eaten.
Because he used the word of God on him, so there was nothing else that he could do. He had to physically count the sand until he either died or was stopped from it. So yep. So my last badass moment is from issue number 17, beating the hell out of Jody. Now this is his childhood abuser, and he gets his revenge on Jody by snapping his neck with his bare hands, and that just ended a lot of trauma and almost like reclaiming some of his lost power from that abuse that he took. I'm not really a fan on killing, but this I think is justified in itself.
Jody had it coming.
Jody had it coming.
Yeah.
It was justified, and it felt like he got a sense of relief from doing that. So those are my 3 badass moments. Calvin, do you want to go next with that?
Yeah. So my 3 badass moments are, let's see, I'm gonna go from least to most badass, but my number 3, let's see, and then one of them was from the Santa Killer mini, where the Santa Killers, who was a man and died and went to hell, he eventually becomes the Santa Killers. He is given his dual pistols, and one of the first things he does is he whips around and puts one right in the devil's head.
Yep.
And one of the other, I guess, greater demons or whatever, is just like holding the devil's. He's like, shut. He's just like, you can't just kill the devil. And the Santa Killer just looks at him. It's like, basically, I just did. What are you going to do about it? I'm the Santa Killers now.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, that was one. Yeah. The other one is also connected to the beating up Jody, and it's the very beginning of that fight. Jesse has just gotten the word of God back to him. I'm not going to say why he loses it, but he's just gotten it back to him. And he's about to face down with Jody. And Jody's like, yo, are you going to use the voice on me? And Jesse's like, no, I'm not going to use the voice on you. You and me are going to do this like men. And Jody just looks at him and tosses the gun away and says, there's hope for you yet, boy. Because and we mentioned that Jody is his childhood abuser. He's also a pseudo father figure to Jesse. He learned a lot from Jody. Not a lot of bad things, but he also learned a little bit.
He learned how to fight.
He learned how to fight. Jesse uses that. He learns how to fix machines and do all this other type of kind of manly shit from a very bad man.
Yeah.
And so having that moment of like almost pride in what Jody has created as they're about to duke it out was just amazing.
I mean, yeah, that was a brutal fight too.
Yeah, it was. But my number one is from very early on in the series. I think it's like maybe issue 3 or 4. And once again, it's using the word of God because, when he uses the word of God, as he says it, so it shall be. Arseface's father, who's the local corrupt sheriff,
Hugo Root,
tries to arrest Jesse. He says, you killed all these people and accidentally. It wasn't his fault. And this guy is just an asshole, just an absolute piece of garbage. One of the reasons why Arseface became Arseface is because of this guy. And we've all met someone like that, where it's just like they're the local sheriff. They're sort of untouchable, and they're just a jerk. And Jesse just looks at him and he says, "Go fuck yourself," using the voice, and he does. You don't see it, but he does.
It's the little word balloons in the background that make you go, "Oh."
He had to remove something, and then put that something somewhere.
Yeah,
Sheriff Hugo Root got took the root of his problem and did something to himself. I mean that's pretty bad. I know that was gonna be one of mine too. Oh my god.
That's crazy.
And that's the kind of book we're talking about, baby.
That's the book we're talking about.
You use the word. So go F yourself, and Sheriff Root had to do it.
Yep.
So and not a good ending for Sheriff Root.
No, not at all. All right, so Gary, how about you?
All right, so of course, I was, all those are there that y'all had mentioned. So one that wasn't mentioned is, and then I'll do a little story time.
I love story time.
Yep, Cassidy, Jesse's on and off again flame, Tulip O'Hara, and Jesse are 3 traveling companions there, and Cassidy. It's not a big spoiler because you find out very quickly in the book that Cassidy is a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
So Cassidy, there are secrets that Cassidy has that get revealed toward the end, and Cassidy has some darkness to him that Jesse doesn't agree with, and has some serious issues with how Cassidy has conducted himself. And Jesse and Cassidy get to the point where Jesse has to have a reckoning with Cassidy. Now, as Sal described in his, or that was Jamie with the badass Cassidy moment, where Cassidy went through all these 50 members of the Grail and just ripped them to shreds, even as he himself was pretty well injured. He has the vampiric strength, and he is, he's stronger than any man. But Jesse is going to have a reckoning with Cassidy without using the word. And matter of fact, he does use the word. He tells Cassidy he's going to fight like hell. So he forces Cassidy to fight him and not take it easy on him. And Jesse, I mean, it's a pretty big Donnybrook. And, Jesse, who is totally outclassed, puts a whooping on Cassidy for the most part. So again, I won't tell you how this ends, but Jesse is not going to use the word except to encourage him. I mean, I think that's badass. He's not using the word, except he's using the word to tell him, you're going to fight me like hell. You're not taking it easy on me. We're duking this out.
Right.
Man, I mean, that's pretty badass. And as I'm going to get into the story time that I'm going to get into. We'll get into the other moment where I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on a moment that we're talking about early on in the first. I encourage everybody to read the first 12 issues. We have the resolution in 12, and Jesse gets captured by Jody and TC, who are his longtime abusers, and taken back to his grandmother, who is the one that is really, as bad as Jody was physically to him, and TC to a lesser extent, it's his grandmother that is really what has twisted his mind up in a lot of ways and has put this emotional abuse to him. When Jesse was little, and Jesse saw something horrific happened to his father at the hands of Jody. So that's also in his mind. But when Jesse would rebel, they would put him in a coffin. Matter of fact, here's one of my, it will be one of my covers, but here's a coffin and a character sitting on the coffin. They would put Jesse in a coffin in the bottom of a lake that was airtight, and they would pump oxygen down to him, and he was trapped in there, and it was a deprivation chamber. I mean, just how cruel can you get to do that to the kid? He was a kid when they did this. And during this time period, through his love of, John Wayne, he had this ongoing hallucination, or is it something mystical? I don't, everybody's going to have their own interpretation. My interpretation is it had that this was something he had as a kid, this hallucination that John Wayne was talking to him and was sitting there with him when he was in that casket. He was sitting on the casket talking to him, telling him it's going to be okay, remember your father, things like that. And as Jesse gets old, and now as Jesse's got later in life has the power of Genesis, this John Wayne hallucination or spirit or entity comes back to him. My personal belief is it's got something to do with a Genesis communicating with them, but that there are many different interpretations. It's just mine. But anyway, Jesse's at a low point after he's been taken back to Angelville and to his grandmother and TC and Jody, and he's taken with Tulip, and Tulip is actually killed. Now, maybe she doesn't stay that way, but let me say that. She's killed. Jody blows her brains out. And Jesse is distraught, and he is down, and the spirit of John Wayne starts talking to him again. And you see Wayne a lot of times in shadow. I'll show you. So you never see his face, but you know who it is and who he's talking to. And it's a like here. Can you see that right there?
Mm-hmm.
So that's got to. So he comes back to him when Jesse's at his lowest, and he's bringing Jesse back from the brink of despair because he's seen Tulip. He's seen Tulip killed, and they're going to his life and how the shitty things that have happened, and Wayne's got him all fired up, and Jesse kicks TC's ass. I mean, kicks him, and Jesse says, "This is just so great." End of issue 11, and I had to wait a whole month for the next issue, and it was like, "Oh my god, I got to wait a month for this." We've got these great panels, and you look at face of Jesse's, and to the entity that's John Wayne. He goes, "No more quitting. I'm going to go." The rest of them, we're in Cuss Town now, right? Jamie, I can do the cussing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. No, Grandma and Jody and the rest of the motherfucking vermin, and I'm going to stamp them to the shit. They go back looking for God, and when I find him, he better have a fucking good excuse. And I had to hear it, Pilgrim, because there's a little girl that lying dead out there needs a talk the talk. Now let's see you walk the walk. It was the last page of that issue. You got it. And Jesse is mad as hell. Epic throwdown with Jody. And Jody, he actually, like Calvin said, Jody says there's hope for you yet, boy, because he's not going to use the brutal fight. And he breaks Jody's back. And he breaks his, and his neck. And what's really cool, Jody whoops him pretty bad too. So Jesse is hurt at the end, right before Jody dies, and before Jesse kills him, and what Jody says to him, "Proud of you, boy." that is hard. That is hard. I'm proud of you, boy. Jody is a freaking force of nature in this thing. Jody is. Jody is he trifled with. And the fact for Jesse to kick, to finally beat him, because he spent a lifetime getting his ass kicked by Jody. Not for the lack of trying, though, but constantly beating his ass, and he finally gets him, and then Jesse chokes him out, and that's it. So I mean, Grindhouse, like I said, I really like that description, Grindhouse. It's what it is. Mark was rough. I mean, after it, I think we all needed to bathe, and we needed, we got in it, I'm sure. So
yeah. Most definitely.
Badass all the way.
Badass through and through on that one for sure.
Yep.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump to our next segment, which is top covers. So we've submitted 3 covers that we find that are really badass, and we can talk about them. Calvin, I'm going to go ahead and put yours up first. Let me find there you are, top covers for Calvin. Boom. There you go. Why don't you go ahead and talk about them?
Okay, so I'm assuming I can't see them, but I'm assuming they're up there. There they are. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh yeah,
Right, so
you're a little bit of a delay. You're giving us an echo because of everything, but that's okay.
Yeah. All right. So the one right in the middle, that is the one that started it all. It is number 1, and just look at that cover. Just the reason why that is my number 1 cover is because you get the tone of this series just from this cover. You know that there's going to be a lot of wild shit and a lot of biblical shit going on in this book. And like you look at Jesse, you can't really the look on his face. You can't tell, is he a bad guy? Like, is this guy gonna be the main character? And then you see the church on fire and just the colors. It's a beautiful cover, and it's the reason why I'm aware of this book, because back in 2009, 16 years ago, there was a preacher's special that was given to local comic book stores for, I think you could buy it for like $1. It was meant to be kind of promoting the Vertigo series. And Preacher was one of them. I saw that cover and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then I started getting the trades, and that's how I ended up reading the whole series, was because of that one cover.
Yep.
And then to the left of it, you can see issue number 50, another beautiful cover later on the series. And to me, there's the word I would use to describe this cover is weight. There's a lot of weight to this cover. Because at first you just see Jesse's face with missing the eye, and you think, okay, this is just another cover showing Jesse's face. And then you see what's written on the walls and the layout of it, and you realize that this is a reflection of his face, and it's a reflection of his face in the Vietnam War memorial, which is important to Jesse because obviously his father was a Vietnam veteran. And that's one of the things that Garth Ennis has always given a lot of respect to the guys who fought in Vietnam, because there's a very interesting situation where a lot of those guys, they grew up where their dads or their grandfathers went to fight the Nazis, and they came back as heroes. And then these guys follow in their father's footsteps. They go fight in Vietnam, and they come back and they're villainized.
Right.
And so seeing this cover where Jesse and Garth and Glenn Fabry, and they all give their respect to these guys who laid down their lives in service to their country. It's a very beautiful cover, and so the weight of it is kind of what gets to me.
All right, very cool.
That's the same reason why I think Frank Castle works best as that he's got that extra weight on him that he fought that so many people didn't agree with, and those guys came back vilified. And for 30 years, who was a Vietnam vet, and he carried that weight with him too. Weight is the perfect word, Calvin.
Yep,
absolutely.
And then on the very right, you can see this is the rear cover to Preacher Absolute Volume 1. And I love this cover because you get a sense of this I guess maybe the scale of this story. You've got Jesse's head, and you can see that this scene beneath him. This is obviously a scene from his childhood. This is when this is probably the most traumatic and awful moment in his life. And you can see it's happening to him with that little kid in his overalls. That just now, as a father myself, that just gets to me.
Yeah, that kid is Jesse.
And like,
and that kid is Jesse. Yep.
yeah, and you get to see like this scene is taking place, and these figures are so small, and this environment is so big, and yet the impact of this one tiny moment in this environment just. You can see it in Jesse's face up in the sky. You can see the pain and the hurt in his face of this memory. And it gives you also a sense of like, oh yeah, there's going to be some pretty bad stuff that happens in the story. But there is light in the end.
Yeah, it's a powerful picture. That's a powerful picture for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Very good. All right, Uncle Gary, you want to go next here?
Yeah, I'm going to have some repeats here, but that's okay.
That's fine. That's all right. Here we go.
All right. So slightly different variations on it. Calvin was just describing there on the left. This is the hardback is or to the preacher trade paper where it says until the end of the world on it, and that was the name. That was that arc on that. I think that's like 7 through 12 in that paperback. You know, the picture Calvin had more. You know, didn't have any, but it is the same thing. It's that terrible tableau of the proud life. You know, and it's just the look of pain on his face. He's right. That is just. And in all these covers we're showing are Glenn Fabray covers. He was the cover artist for this.
Yep.
Also, originally it was on issue 50, but I took the cover volume 5 because it didn't have the box. In issue 50 there were pinups and they had a box on the one that you saw on Cal Creators there. This is a cleaner cover of it. And I will say this, and Dan Kelly and I and Calvin, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial is something that is not too far from us. Those of you visiting the D.C. area, it is powerful, and I would visit that wall. It's a wall of names in black granite and moving, and the vibe when you go there is hushed. There are kids there. There's something there that they're calm and respectful. Never been there without that overwhelming feeling of solemnity. There, it's just something. And to as his reflection in that shiny granite on the wall of those guys that didn't come back, and a lot of those were new in his Vietnam War experience. So that beautifully captured by Fabray. The one on the right is the cover of, and that's depicting the John Wayne character sitting on the casket that Jesse's in on there with him and helping him through that troubled time. And so that to me means a lot. And I have a couple personal copies of it, but it's signed. That says, "To Gary, keep your powder dry," and it's such John Wayne's grandson. So
yeah.
To me, that's a really no way I could not include that cover.
Absolutely, that's a great one. That is a great one. Okay, Gary, do me a favor. I need you to exit the stream and come back into it because you are coming through very choppy.
Okay.
So can you exit out and come back? And I will show Jamie's covers right now.
Absolutely.
And
yep.
All right, Jamie. Here are your covers, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you for being the bad guy for that one, Sal, because I was about to say something. I'm like, it's Uncle Gary. I can't do that.
Well, I mean, I was waiting until he finishes, I didn't want to cut him off mid,
No, I totally understand. All right, so from the left, obviously this one's probably going to be shown by everyone, but this is book 1, obviously from the first issue, and as everyone has already said, it entails everything that you are going to expect in this story. Next up in the middle, I got Preacher 66. Just the way this looks, like gun on the hip and everything coming at you, just standing alone. I don't know any better way to put it than this is what a standoff should look like.
Right. That's a good one.
Lastly, number 3, I picked this one because when I talk about Grindhouse, like the way it made me feel, this was the depiction of it. This is what brought that to my mind. It just the blood-soaked shirt, the blood-soaked smile, and menacing grin, and just like all I can hear in my head is I wear sunglasses at night.
Nice.
It just ties it all together. So yeah, those are my 3. If I had to pick just one, it'd be 66, and that would be that's when I would display every single time.
Very cool. All right, go, Gary. I see you're back. Give us a test. Give us a test here.
Oh, love those covers. How's that?
That's awesome.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yes, so much better. All right, then let's jump to my covers here really quick. All right, so I actually chose a few different ones.
Yeah, you did. Oh my God, you did what I used to do when I did these.
Yeah, well, I like spreading love around. That's all I have to do. So the first one left there, trade paperback number 3A. I like this one with the, it's got some of the Vietnam military in there with the American flag in the background. In the front, he's just casually lighting up the cigarette type of thing. I don't know. It just spoke to me. I love that cover. The middle one is Preacher number 4, and he looks like he's like giving it right there to the angel, just telling him off right to his face. Love that. And then, of course, the final one there, Preacher number 10, the black eye and the bloodstained shirt speak for itself. That's just badass. It's him sticking to his guns, standing up for anything that's going to, get in his way type situation.
And that's him as a youth. That's him as like a teenager.
Right.
Teenager, yep.
But, yeah, that speaks testament to his character, I feel.
Absolutely.
All right. So before we jump into our next segment, we got to talk about our giveaway.
Yes, we do.
All right. So every month, the Codex Station is doing a giveaway. You enter in hashtag giveaway into the chat, and let me just cut his face right up. Phil Collins. Yep, that is so true. Yep, very true, Mr. Keith. Anyhow, enter hashtag giveaway into the chat. If you're not subscribed to our channel, do that. Do that one little simple click. Get subscribed to our channel. Show us the screenshots you've done that. If you're $1 a month member, you're automatically entered in. And look at these books that you could win. We'll start off with that Joker trade, The Death in the Family. That's out of my personal collection. That's a great story. Everyone must read that one. And then, of course, I threw in some foily goodness here. So you get Red Hulk number 1, Carnage, Eddie Brock Carnage number 1, and Absolute Power number 1. All foily goodness coming to you March. And I believe that giveaway is going to happen on Saturday night. So if you haven't done a hashtag giveaway and gotten entered in, do it before you lose out.
Do it now.
Do it now.
Do it now.
All right, let's go ahead and jump to our next segment, which is Essential Readings. Let's see. Jamie, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, if you don't mind listening to me ramble on about each one, that's fine.
Oh, I'd love to hear you ramble. Let's just put your let's get your recommended readings up on the screen.
All right. As I said before, I'm going to read what I wrote because I wrote this out for Uncle Gary's approval. So I have first one, Gone to Texas. I said it's a wild ride. Think road trip meets supernatural chaos with a foul-mouthed preacher, his badass ex, and an Irish vampire tearing through a dark and twisted take on America. If you're into insane storytelling, unforgettable characters, and a no-holds-barred action, you got to check that one out for that story arc. Next up, we got Proud Americans. You get deep into Jesse's past, some brutal action, a rescue mission that's straight up insane all around, and that dark, twisted humor that makes preachers so damn good. And lastly, I have the Alamo. basically think it's the ultimate payoff to one of the most wildest, most insane journeys in comic history. The brutal action, dark humor, and the emotionally satisfying showdown that cements Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy as some of the best characters ever put on paper.
Wow, Jamie, that's high praise there, brother.
Yeah, I like the characters. To me, like there's so much depth in all of them, and you don't see that too often, especially with side characters. You have your forefront, which is Jesse, and you learn as much deep diving into him, but to have that same aspect go into like Dulip and Cassidy, you don't see that anywhere else.
Yeah, and you know what? And your heart breaks when you find out that Cassidy's not kind of what we thought he was. You know, that he's not the good guy totally that we kind of thought he was. Your heart breaks, you know, and you're so disappointed in him, right?
Right.
And that's great writing, is what that is.
Yeah. As a reader, you feel just as betrayed as the other characters.
Absolutely.
But you feel at the end, I felt more justified because I felt like it. My thing is when any comic we read, you want to bring out a sense of like astonishment or a sense of like I felt them pull me into this story, and that's what this did.
All right, very good. I'm going to go ahead and show mine next. That way, Calvin and Gary can back clean up, you might say.
Yes, they're hitting that 3-4 spot.
That's the wrong spot. This is the right spot. All right, so I went with Preachers 1 through 17. Uncle Gary recommended me I read 1 through 12, but after reading, I got through 12. I kept going, and I realized that I was already up to 17. I'm like, well, I got to include this as my first recommended reading. Why is this great? It's got an explosive beginning. You're building the world. It introduces all of the key players. It's got some brutal action and dark humor. It's really well rounded. That's like the first 7 issues. The 8 through 17. This is really until the world ends, or until the end of the world. It's got some great deep character work. It's intense emotional stakes are really shown in this one, and it's got the most satisfying revenge moment, which I talked about in my badass moments before, if you remember that. But it's got one of the most satisfying revenge moments in the series so far. Okay, so far. So the Preachers 1 through 17, definitely that's a definite must read. As I kept going through this, I had to read Preacher 59 to 66. This is the Alamo story and Paul in the Saddle combined. And why is this great? Well, it's an epic, emotional, satisfying conclusion. It really does. It wraps it up. There's promises of revenge and redemption and reckoning, and that all comes to fruition into the final issues. So that's a definite must read. And then my last one, I went a little bit off the beaten trail here. Cassidy, Blood and Whiskey.
Yeah.
So this gives you a more in depth, I think, on Cassidy and more behind backstory on him, and you figure out, it kind of gives you more insight on who he is, why he is the way he is, and how he fit with Jesse in the beginning so well.
Right.
I mean, that's how I feel with it too. I don't want to get into this because this does lead to some spoilers. I don't want to throw those off, but if you want to read more about Cassidy, this is the story to check out.
Absolutely. Good choice.
Thank you. All right, Calvin, let me get yours recommended reading up here. There you are. And any second now, you should see them.
Yep. Any second now. I mean, I already know, I think, what they're going to be at. Yep, there it is. Preacher 1 through 12, particularly the Angelville story, which I think is like the last 5 or maybe the last half of that whole story arc. And that 1 through 12 is my favorite block of the whole Preacher story, just because you learn so much about it, because it's a perfect beginning, middle, and end. It has a satisfying ending to it. There's still more to come, but if you were to just read 1 through 12, I think you would get a good, satisfying story, because it really introduces you to all of the messed up things that are going to happen, and how frustrated you're going to be feeling that our heroes are meeting these people that are just plain evil, and they get away with it sometimes, but by the end, justice is served to all of these guys. And going back to so my interpretation of John Wayne's I guess figure in this story is John Wayne, I feel like, is the manifestation of Jesse's sense of justice. That's what I feel.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Next one is the Preacher Special, The Saint of Killers, which was the 4-issue miniseries about the Saint of Killers. And this to me was, it's a character that was interesting in the story, but this is a classic Western with a big supernatural element to it. This guy, Saint of Killers, fought in the Civil War, loses the things that are most dear to him, goes on a rampage, and ends up in hell, where, like I said earlier, this man is so cold-blooded, and he's got nothing left to lose. He's got nothing going on in his heart. That hell literally freezes over, and they decide, we're going to use this guy. The Angel of Death is going to use this guy to do his job, and he does it a little too well.
Yep.
And then the last one, it's actually cut off. I can't actually see it, but I've remembered it is the Preacher Special One Man's War, which is Herr Starr, one of the antagonists of the story. It's his backstory. You get to learn a little bit about where he came from and why he is the way that he is. Because when you're introduced to the Grail, you're like, oh yeah, these guys are the bad guys. And then you're introduced to Herr Starr. It's like, oh, this guy's bad, but he also doesn't really kind of put up with the BS that the Grail is kind of feeding him. And that makes me like him a little bit. And you learn about his story, how he was in I believe it's called the GSG-9, the German Special Forces police unit, and that he became who he was, and he went down this path of eventually becoming one of the higher ups in the Grail, where they're trying to essentially make the world into their interpretation of a better place, because of a terrorist hijacking of a plane that led to the death of a little girl, and how that impacted him. And I'm not going to give away the ending, but you realize by the end of the story that that little girl's death impacted him in a way that you probably weren't expecting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. All right.
Good choice, Calvin.
Good choices, Calvin. Love that. Uncle Gary, here come yours. Oh.
All right, there we go. So, Preacher 1 through 12, that arc that culminates with the Angelville storyline and the culmination of what happened to his abusers from when he was a young boy on to young adulthood. And Grandmama is, like I said, as bad as Jody is, Grandmama is the nasty piece of work there. So, Preacher 18 and 50, we showed the cover of 50 where he's at the Vietnam Wall. And at 18 is where he runs into one of his dad's Vietnam buddies. His nickname was Spaceman, and they're sitting at the bar and they have these lighters. And a real deal in the Vietnam War, John Wayne went to Vietnam and handed out lighters that said "fuck communism," and they're sitting at a airport bar. And one of them notices that they have the identical lighters, and when Spaceman looks over and sees Jesse's face, he goes, "John Custer?" And Jesse said, "No, John, that was my daddy." And it's just, it's just an amazing meeting between the two of them. And then they meet up again in 50, where they go to the wall together. And in each story, Spaceman recounts things that happened to him and Jesse in Vietnam, and it's really good. I mean, it's like with both Garcinis stories, there's humor in it that is just wicked humor, and brutal sometimes, but just poignant. So just really good stories, 18 and 50. And then I threw in Preacher Tall in the Saddle, and it was a one shot. It's before Jesse is before Genesis comes into his body, and he's running around with Tulip in the early years. And it's just pretty much a Western story where they help a Texas Ranger track down some horse thieves. And it is just fantastic story. So I recommend it highly.
All right, very good, very good, good stories. There we are. All right, so our next segment is best artist and author for the series.
We missed one segment.
What did we miss?
Critiques and criticisms.
We did miss critiques and criticisms. Let's jump to that then.
I didn't think
Critiques
there
and
were any.
criticisms are. So thank you for doing that. I didn't realize we had missed that.
No worries. I was waiting until after we finished up all that. So
all right, so let's jump to that. So what are things that we don't like about this character? Let's let Calvin go first on this one. What don't you like about this character?
Brain.
There doesn't have to be anything.
It's been a little while since. Well, I'd say my number one thing is the hair. Not a huge fan of the hair, to be honest.
it gives that Edward Scissorhands kind of vibe.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, especially on some of the Glenn Fabry covers, it kind of has that look to it. Like he just, it was Doc Brown if he would have had a full head of hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But in terms of like critiques, criticisms, I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily have anything I want to critique on him because overall, I feel like Jesse is a good character. He's a good man. He's someone that I think people could aspire to be like him. But yeah, I'd say maybe my only gripe. Really, the character that I would be most critical of is actually Cassidy. Yeah, he would definitely be the character that I'm most critical of, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like Cassidy does a couple of things that I probably wouldn't have forgiven him for, but Jesse does.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that says more about Jesse than it does about me. That he's he's much more forgiving than I am, which is another good quality of his.
Very good, very good. All right, so for me, I'll go next on this one. So this is really my first overall experience with Preacher. I really don't have a problem with him. With him himself. The way I understand the way the character was written. I'm not a personal fan of how it ended, but I understand the reasoning behind it. So, the story flowed well. The artwork worked good. The characters really, were relatable, and you got attached to them, which was great. And there we go. And it did work for me. So honestly, I could not find anything that I really said, "Ooh, that's out of character for him. I don't like that." No, because everything fit in a certain pattern and was true to their characters.
Without giving anything away, the ending that you didn't like, I'm going to assume, was the particular ending that dealt with what the Saint of Killers was doing.
Yes.
Yes. So that is valid. That is valid. And that just made where that is
okay.
That is as a man of faith, that's kind of hard to deal with on that.
It is, yep. and I understand because that's where the story took you, right? And I'm not gonna hate the story because of it. I'm just not a fan of how that ended up.
That's an Innes thing. That's a Garth Innes thing.
I know. And you know what? In the podcast, we actually talked a little bit about this, about how writers put their personal feelings into a story. Does it make it better or does it make it worse?
Right.
If you caught that episode, which was just yesterday, we talked about that. We talked about the whole fridging of a character, if you know what I'm talking about, type situation.
It still gives me PTSD.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, aside from the Saint of Killers ending that we're talking about, we're being vague.
Yeah.
I liked the endings of the other characters.
Yes.
I really did. But the Saint of Killers one is a little tougher if you're a person of faith. And I am too, and I struggle with that ending. But
right.
I thought it was like, woo.
Right. So I don't know. I saw it. This is a story about a guy who kind of, he, not that he loses his faith in God, but he's got trouble. He's got questions for God. He's angry at God. All right, and because of the things that happen to him in life, I have a lot of real life friends that have gone through a lot of trauma, and they have these same feelings. Yeah. And I would like to say the answer to them, but I really can't because I don't have an answer for them.
Right.
That type of situation. So I don't want to dive into that because I don't want to bring this show, down to
Well, but I
Bad,
just wanted
bad
to point out that that was one aspect of the endings.
right.
There are multiple endings to different
They're all the characters.
but that was the Saint of Killers ending.
Right. That is
I
correct.
think that I think I did also have, because I'm not a person of faith, but I also did kind of have a bit of an issue with that ending because that ending in particular didn't feel particularly satisfying to me.
Right.
And it also, to me, narratively, it also didn't really feel satisfying because it felt like the major conflict was handed off to a side character, which,
Right.
I mean, the Saint of Killers is a major character, but he's not the main three.
Right.
And
So
you know what I
narratively,
found more satisfying on that is if we didn't see the culmination of it, is maybe if we just saw the Saint of Killers waiting.
Right.
And you
Right.
don't see it, right? He's just there waiting, lurking.
Yeah.
I think that would have been more satisfying and you not have to see it, you know.
Then at least it's your imagination type situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's what I have. Jamie, how about you then?
So I might have a little bit of a more mic drop kind of moment for everybody.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, all right. Drop it.
So reading it, obviously I did my research. So Jesse has this like we talked about earlier, he's got his moral code, right? And to me, how can I put this in a way that, because I don't want to go on this whole lengthy thing I just wrote. I'm trying to get the spark notes, but to me, he's hypocritical, especially when it comes to the relationships of other characters. Like Tulip and Cassidy. He holds himself to like a higher standard, but when he makes his decisions, they're more selfish and more controlling than what a moral code that he has and he's been through should be. And I felt there was that conflict there where it was like, okay, he holds himself to the standard, and then A, B, and C happen, and now he's in control because he doesn't believe in anybody else. So we're just back to square one. Like everything that his code was for just kind of goes away when it comes to the relationship aspect of the people around him.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense for you guys.
Well,
but it makes sense
Jason,
for me.
remember, Jesse is very imperfect. He's a very imperfect vessel, which is why I believe Genesis chose him.
Right.
Because he is someone that is infused with good and with bad, as Genesis is. And I don't think Genesis could have existed in someone that was more this way or more this way.
Yeah.
It had to be somebody that was.
I just felt like if it was maybe a lesser character or something else rather than those two, it would have been different for me, that viewpoint. But to have it be these two characters that you built up through the series and those be your advocates for it, I just didn't think that it fit. So
right. Okay.
That's valid. I mean, that's we're all supposed to have different opinions on it, so there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right.
And this book really lends itself to people interpreting it in different ways.
Absolutely.
All right, Uncle Gary, how about you?
So my criticism is a criticism that a friend of mine gave me, and I had an answer for it. And so to me, it's not a criticism, how it's supposed to go. So when you read the whole thing, there's a point in this series where Jesse is very disillusioned and he meanders. And the point my friend made was in between the beginning where he was so focused and then when he got focused in the end, he was just kind of aimless. The series was aimless. And I said, that's exactly because Jesse was aimless. It was supposed to be that way. Jesse was trying to find his new footing. He had been devastated by a series of events that had happened, and his mission had been derailed, and he had totally lost his mojo and his confidence. And so that is why it meandered. That's why it was wandering around aimlessly, and that's part of the story. I mean, I believe that was what Ennis was trying to point out, that Jesse did not have his footing, and that's why the story was in that mode until he got his things aligned again, and he got back on his mission, and he went for it. So that was so it's not it's me refuting a criticism, is what that is. So.
Okay,
that works.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
That's what this is all about.
And progress is never a straight line.
No.
That's very true. Absolutely.
Yeah, never is. Never is. All right, then can we go ahead and jump now to the best artist and best writer?
Yeah, we didn't miss anything else. So
All right, thank you. Sorry about that. I really
it's all right. No, as soon as you jumped into
top covers.
Top covers, I was like, I'll get it after we're all done talking.
That's fine. That's fine. You should have done that before the giveaway. That's all right. My apologies. We went out of sequence on that, but that's all right. That's good.
Well,
all right. So we know that
So I noticed that, but I wasn't going to point it out. I wasn't going to do that to you.
Yeah, I know you. I know you noticed it, Uncle Gary, because you are Mr. IT and if
I know,
fix everything. You know,
Mr. It. Yeah.
He fixed his audio pretty quick.
He did. He did.
Mm-hmm.
All right, for best writer and best artist, well, there's only been one. Garth Ennis, Steve Dick Dillon. There's no really good choice on that, but we can actually now think about people who we like to see write Preacher and like to draw Preacher. So, Calvin, what are your thoughts on that?
So I was thinking for a writer, I could see. So have you guys ever read the miniseries Southern Bastards?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So Jason Aaron, who I've met before, who I love as a writer, I think he could do it because he's from the South and he can kind of capture that spirit of the South that Preacher really has, which is so funny to me that Garth Ennis is able to do that even though he's from Ireland. But Garth Ennis definitely, he comes from like that very working class rural background, and so I think he kind of understands the American South in a way that some people don't. So as far as writers go, I think Jason Aaron could do it. For artists, I don't know. It's hard because Steve Dillon's art is really iconic. It's really difficult to find someone who matches his style, or who could tell the story in the way that he did. But I feel like Gary Frank is pretty close to it.
That's a good pull.
Yeah.
I feel like he could do a pretty good job because his style is not not Steve Dillon's, but it has that kind of feeling to it. The characters look like and they feel like real people. But the other person I was actually thinking of is Dave Johnson.
Oh.
Because Dave Johnson, if I remember correctly, he was a preacher, or he was going to be a preacher.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
those
good.
would be my picks.
All
Like
right.
Al Ewing. I can see it.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. That would be cool.
Al Ewing.
All right, Uncle Gary, how about you?
All right. I think Jason Aaron is, I mean, first of all, like we'll preface, the only choices, I mean, the real choices are just Garth Ennis, Steve Dillon, and a special nod to Fab Ray for those covers. But,
Right.
And Dillon has a kind of simplistic style, but I think it's very emotive, and very emotional, with the emotions that he portrays. And I think it really works for the characters. But I think Aaron is an excellent choice to write it, but I think someone that would be really interesting too is someone that was a former theology student, and that would be John Ostrander.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
I think
That's a good
Ostrander would have a really cool insight. And if any of you have read the Spectre run from the mid-90s, and I think Calvin has, that is, and Mandrake doing the art on that was really good. And good news this week is I have heard that will be collected in an omnibus finally.
Yes.
Peter Tomasi has been preaching this because he edited that. He has been preaching this to DC for a while. It's 62 issues. So volume 1 is going to be issue 1 through 30 or 31. Thank goodness. So that is one of the series. But John Ostrander, as a former theology student, I think would be very interesting with this. And John Ostrander, who also has the grit in him to create a character like Grimjack, who was a gritty character. And since we're on the Grimjack bandwagon, let me proffer Tim Truman as artist. He's a gritty artist.
Yes.
And he could do that grit, grindhouse effect that Preacher could use. So I would say we're Strander and Truman.
Okay. All right,
Good.
Jamie, how about you then?
So I had to think about this and really put into perspective of who would be close in my eyes. When I think of, heaven and hell and it being its own thing, the first person that comes to mind is Todd McFarlane. I think he would do an amazing job with the character. I think there probably be even more depth than what we wanted before. For art, I don't know how much everyone's going to like my answer, but for grittiness, I'm going with Jeff Shaw. Like,
Okay.
it would illuminate off the page, I believe, the same way this did.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Choice.
Jeff Shaw,
for-
what books did he do? I'm not familiar with him.
Jeff Shaw did Buzzkill. He's done Crossover, Thor. He was working on Wolverine, I believe, for a couple of issues, the last run. So, yeah,
All right,
it just looks nasty.
Very good. Very good. All right, then for me, I had to think about this, and I kind of took your approach, Jamie. I wanted to see, because normal superhero genre writers, I don't think could really do much justice.
No, I don't think so
to
either.
what it is. I thought maybe who created Constantine, Alan Moore. I think Alan Moore might be a good writer.
Yeah.
But there was one series that I read. It's called Drive Like Hell, and that it fits this motif perfectly. And that was Rich Douek, Douek. So I think he's written some other ones: Sea of Sorrows, Road of Bones, Wailing Blade. So he's been around the block with these type of gritty type of stories, and the art is similar too. And the art for Drive Like Hell was Alex Cormack. So I don't know. I think they would fit with this genre. You know what? I'm just gonna call it. Preacher is his own genre. There's your superhero genre. There's your other stuff, but Preacher is its own genre, I believe.
Preacher gets his own section.
Yeah.
Preacher is my favorite non-superhero book I've ever read.
Yeah.
My favorite superhero book is JLA Avengers. My favorite non-superhero book is Preacher, and I've reread it 4 times, I think.
Yeah.
And each time I read it, I get just a little extra, a little something maybe I didn't notice before. I just love this book.
Well, there you go. Okay, so those are my choices then for that. Not much work, but I think it was difficult to find someone else I think that could write this and give it the justice that it deserves. So
I think so too.
Right. All right. I think this wraps it up for our show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen in the chat, thank you so much for chiming in and joining us tonight. I hope you had a good time checking this out, and we hope that you check out those stories. Calvin, thank you for joining us from Japan.
Yes, thank you.
We love it. Come back anytime. If you got another character you want to talk about, we'll definitely have you on the show for sure. And if you're feeling a little feisty, you can always come on the Comics Unleashed, which is late night Saturday nights.
Oh.
Good stuff there.
What? And Jamie, something you didn't know, Calvin. Why don't you tell Jamie who your favorite Bat character is?
There you go.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got
Good stuff.
And then Uncle Gary found me my Grail, which was that was it the Batman 650 alternative cover?
Yeah.
Was by Matt Wagner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Red
Where Jason Todd standing there with the helmet, just smiling in a Robin mask.
Yep.
Yep. That's a good cover.
Good stuff.
That's a good cover.
Yeah. If you guys ever decide to talk about a manga, my first suggestion would be Lone Wolf and Cub, the one that started it all, with covers by Frank Miller, and that's why it got popular in the States.
That's
All
true.
right. Good stuff there. Good stuff there.
Thank you for having me too.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh yeah.
No problem. No problem. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and put this one to bed. I'm your host tonight, Sal the Slab Guy. Over here is the Ric Flair of comics. Yeah, the kids love the show. Now they want to hear about the back.
Wow. All right.
We're just corrupting youth all over the place.
I can't wait till they talk about it in Sunday school.
That's right. Pros and cons. Right Right there is the Ric Flair of comics. Right there is J-Dub, the master builder himself. Again, down below is Calvin. Thank you much for joining us.
Good job.
Have a good night, folks. We will see you next week when we are covering Carol Danvers.
Carol Danvers.
So, hope to see you guys on Saturday night on Comics Unleashed as well. So take care. We'll see you then.
All right.